Hello, thank you for being in a new video. This time I have full review of the ZTE Axon 55G. Let's get started. This is a device that is aimed at the mid-range, although as you know the Axon ZTE brand uses it for its most consented devices. So I think we will find very good dice in this equipment at a price that is not so high. In fact, in Mexico, although it is launched exclusively with Telcel, it has a price of 5,999 pesos. So it is not an extremely expensive device, but it already offers features such as a curved screen and other little things that honestly leave me very satisfied. But obviously it will not be a perfect device, so come with me to know it point by point to see what it can offer us against its competitors. As I anticipated, possibly its most attractive point is the design, since in this price range it is not common to see devices with curved screen, let alone with the use of the front as high as this device has. So really that aspect is extremely nice. Although we would like to see some special glass to protect this screen since it does not come with Gorilla Glass, and ZTE does not give any figures or any specific data regarding the resistance that we could get to find in it. So I have my doubts about its durability, and honestly I do not dare to throw it to the ground to check it. On the right side we have the power button with a red highlight and also the volume buttons. On the top is placed a microphone, and it is curious that this frame has a dip, so it is not completely straight. The left frame is completely clean, and it serves to note that it has a thickness of 7.95 millimeters, so it is an extremely thin device, and consider also that the frame is even thinner due to the fact that it has curved cover both front and back, although the frame is plastic with a metallic look. At the bottom we have the tray to place the nano SIM card. In Mexico only one slot is available, although in other regions it is likely that there is a dual SIM version. At the bottom is also placed a microphone, the USB-C port and the speaker. And for the back cover we will find plastic, although it has a similar look to glass, but when you touch it you immediately realize that it is plastic. And in this case I have the black color edition, but there is another edition in green color. At first glance it seems to be a very traditional back design and similar to what we see in other devices with a circular camera module but with two circles to place the cameras, but you should notice that the top circle is not only a camera module but at the same time it will have a special notification light. Notice how this ring can light up in different colors, so it's kind of a replacement for the traditional notification LED we saw some time ago. Honestly, I find it a very attractive addition because nowadays there are few things that differentiate one cell phone from another, and I think this element can become very important when noticing positive points for a device. So this, without a doubt, is one of them. In the software section I tell you what you can do with this ring, but for now let me tell you that it does not have any special resistance certification, so in that sense it stays within what one would expect from a device of this price, no surprises. There is no doubt that the screen will also be another amazing element of this device. It has a good size of 6.67 inches, but best of all is that it is with OLED technology, so it offers us perfect contrasts. That is, the areas that are in black color will be represented by pixels completely off, so the contrast is simply spectacular. And at the same time it offers us a full HD plus resolution, that is 1080 by 2400 pixels, ensuring that we have an excellent level of detail to view multimedia content or even to read some small texts. Having an AMOLED screen, it also offers us intense and saturated colors and good viewing angles, so even viewing content from various sides, as you can see, an excellent experience is maintained. I think we could be in front of one of the best screens in the range, as generally other manufacturers in this same price range give much simpler screens. I honestly think it is spectacular what ZTE is doing. It is also a screen with 120 Hz in its refresh rate, so we will also see a screen that represents smooth movements in a very simple way. You'll even notice that you can have an automatic setting to adapt the refresh rate depending on the content you're viewing for lower battery consumption. Or you can manually set whether you want 60, 90 or even 120 Hz. This is something that seems simple but that few manufacturers allow in this price range. And obviously it comes well accompanied by dark mode, night mode, and you can even change the screen temperature a bit, and don't forget the reading mode that will put all content in grayscale for comfortable viewing. There is not a bit of doubt that the screen will also be a strong point. But the sound doesn't stand out too much. It only has one speaker located at the bottom, so the sound is mono. It has good volume and good presence of bass frequencies. I have no doubt that the sound is of good quality, and most of its competitors will also offer mono sound, although there are some that could surprise with stereo sound. So in this sense it doesn't really surprise, but I don't think it disappoints either. Let's listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. And another point where it could improve would be in the sound software experience, since it will not offer us any equalizer or DTS sound, which is something that ZTE used to put in several devices. We have no equalizer, not even when we connect headphones, which is something that some other manufacturers do offer. Also consider that it also has no headphone jack, and that I think will be one of the most important absences and one of its weakest points, since most of its competitors will have this important addition, so you will have to settle for wireless sound through Bluetooth headphones or headphones through the USB-C port. But if you opt for Bluetooth headphones, you won't have high resolution sound either, as it only supports SBC and AAC codecs. As I mentioned before, the device has two microphones, one on the bottom and one on the top, so it is within what you would expect with support for stereo recording. Below you will hear a recording made with these microphones.
Esta es una prueba de audio con el ZTE Axon 50 5G y sus dos micrófonos que tiene. A continuación vamos a hacer otra.
Right off the bat we realize that the microphones are not very good quality, but let's test below how they would behave with too high a volume in the music.
Lo alto en la música.
Interestingly, recording the audio from the voice memo application sounds very saturated and very bad, but recording it from the camera sounds much better, so for concerts it could also have good quality. The front camera is 16 megapixels with f-aperture 2.5 and fixed focus. Another improvement would be to incorporate a quick launch gesture, since its competitors could have a gesture to double press the button and access the camera, or make some gesture, or something similar. But here there is no way to quickly access the camera. It would only be through the lock screen. But if you are in any other application and want to quickly access the camera, there is no way. For that you have to exit completely and look to access there. The capture speed is good, but it doesn't show any animation to let you know that it has already taken the picture. It only updates the preview of the last picture taken. That experience is very bad. Fortunately, you can show the palm for an easy capture, although that has to be enabled in the settings. At the top you'll find a button to enable beauty mode, although it's only with a single slider and we don't have different face settings as we might find on other devices. We will also have a button to access some filters that we cannot preview in real time, so again in this aspect we realize that the software is not yet so advanced. Possibly the front camera will be one of its weakest points, as it offers acceptable quality for video calls only, but in reality the photos come out with a much lower detail than one might expect. It also does not have the range that we would like to go out with a larger group of friends. Backlit the preview is not optimized, and curiously, although it has HDR, it comes disabled by default. So the results will obviously not be good, having a completely burnt background being one of the few devices today that has this defect. So the picture is not really attractive. In interiors we have a very similar result to what I had already told you, that is, little level of detail. There will also be some completely burned areas, and in the darker areas will also appear a little more grainy, so the photographs are simple. Finally, at night you need to be in front of a direct light source to get a good result, although the level of detail is still low. And in darker areas with backlighting the result honestly doesn't look too bad, although there is a lot of graininess in the darker areas, but I've seen worse results on more expensive devices. To try to illuminate your face, you can turn on the screen as a flash simulation, although the result comes out very unbalanced in color, as the face comes out very pink and the background very warm. This can vary depending on the lighting you have in the environment. But notice how in the evenings it takes good portrait pictures, although it is not able to detect absolutely the whole body. For example, in this case, it defocused my hand as well, giving an unnatural result. Therefore, in the daytime, it will not be able to detect the objects around us either. So we can conclude that this is a rather simple portrait photograph. On the back, we have a 28mm camera, that is, it is a little closer than the average cameras of most cell phones. This camera offers us a 50-megapixel sensor and its lens has an f1.8 aperture with autofocus. After that, we will have two other cameras that I honestly consider a bit useless. They would be macro and depth, in both cases 2 megapixels, with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. Next, we will try to verify how fast the capture can be with this device. We'll try to capture number 1. There it is. I think I captured a little earlier than expected. I'm going to make a second attempt to be absolutely sure it's a fair test. Then that's it. And as you can see, on both my first and my second attempt, the capture is extremely slow because it's about to change to number 2 on one of the attempts, and in another one, a considerable amount of time had already passed, so I don't think it has a fast shutter to capture the exact moment. However, if you have a burst of up to 30 pictures, although not very fast, then it wouldn't be a big deal either. And notice how the burst also took practically half a second to start. So, I don't think it's the most recommendable if you're looking for a very agile capture, because also while it's taking the burst it gets out of focus. I think that would be one of its weak points. In auto mode, you can adjust the focus and exposure compensation, but if you want a little more advanced adjustment, you can enter the expert mode. There you have the exposure compensation, also the shutter speed, which can go all the way down to 0.5 seconds, which is not as amazing as other devices. You can also modify the focus and the ISO, which can go up to 3200. You also modify the white balance and finally the contrast and saturation. As a last point, it does not support RAW photos. If you want to scan a document, you can't do it from the automatic mode, but it does have a special mode for this task. And the truth is that it works very well detecting the edges of these sheets, although it is not as fast as we would like. And remember that you could export that photo to a PDF document or also send it to print to a printer with Wi-Fi, depending on what you need. And for scanning QR codes, again, it is not possible to do this action from the automatic mode, but it does integrate a special mode to do this action and thus make life easier for users. The 50 megapixel camera, so it offers us this high resolution mode to get very detailed pictures and to make cuts while still maintaining a good quality in the photo. I think it does get to take good advantage of the resolution, perhaps not 100% as much more expensive devices, but you do get to see pictures with good detail. For moving pictures, you will have a good result without blurred movements as long as you have a very good light source. Photos in automatic mode are 13 megapixels. We have an adequate level of detail for that resolution. The colors look acceptable to me. I don't think they are the most accurate colors, but I think they are still good quality pictures. Notice how in interiors we're still gonna have considerably high detail and good color saturation. Obviously it's not ultra spectacular photography, but considering the price range, I think it's fine. The backlit photography test in this case was exaggeratedly difficult, but pay attention that in this case it also has an HDR that you have to activate manually. The result is good with respect to the balance of lights and shadows. I insist that it was an exaggeratedly difficult photograph because of the amount of light we had in this specific area. I sincerely believe that he did a very good job, although the color is possibly where we will notice a weak point, since in this type of backlit photographs the color can become distorted. So I don't consider him to be an expert in photography. With the HDR turned off, see what the result would be like with a completely burnt background, although the color is much more accurate. At night with the automatic mode we have a good quality picture, although still not impressive, but fortunately it does have a night mode that greatly improves the capture of colors in the darkest areas. So really the night pictures come out very well as long as you use this mode. Even in the darkest areas, notice the difference between auto mode and night mode. It is definitely capable of capturing a lot of light. The camera has autofocus so you can zoom in on objects to capture these smaller details. Ideally though, you'll want to apply some digital zoom for even better definition. In addition to this, it has a macro camera that, as you will notice, has a much less accurate color and does not represent more detail than the main camera itself can offer. And while it does not have an ultra-wide camera, fortunately it does have a panoramic mode that you can use to capture images with greater amplitude and maintains a good resolution. So I think the panorama mode fortunately does work well. And even though the zoom can go up to 10x, you notice how it's an exaggeratedly artificial zoom and you don't notice a good level of detail, so it is not impressive either. Finally, the portrait mode, notice that it does have good foreground detection, keeping it in focus, but the edges seem to be slightly cloudy in some respects. So it's portrait photography, I think, in keeping with the range of the device. Nothing impressive, although good quality. And to finish, let me show you a night portrait where you manage to appreciate perfectly the good bokeh effect it has in the background, but also a bad edge detection, so when you don't have so much illumination, you can lose a lot of precision. Notice how in this case the object in the foreground was also out of focus. So the quality could vary depending on the lighting you have. For video recording, we will find Full HD at 30 frames per second as the maximum resolution on both the rear camera and the front camera. So it doesn't come to surprise, but it doesn't disappoint either. It does not offer a manual mode for video recording, but it does offer some settings such as white balance, anti-banding adjustment, and pay attention because the video stabilizer is disabled by default. That could work against you, so go ahead and turn it on. And it also has face detection to better illuminate faces when you're in backlit scenes. But it's also nice that you can disable this option that most devices don't allow you to disable. And finally, you can turn the microphone on or off. When recording video, you also have a beauty mode, which is quite curious because it even keeps the full HD resolution while you are using this filter. And we also have the color filters that we saw in the picture available for video recording. Although the video quality is in full HD, I must say that it doesn't have that much level of detail. In addition, it also feels a little strange movement, and there is also little accuracy in the colors since even the white balance can be altered throughout the same clip, so I'd say it's a pretty straightforward video recording. You may even notice that the focus is very imprecise, as there are several moments where it hesitates and is not able to refocus with such speed or accuracy. Even in slightly more subtle movements, you will see that it loses focus completely. And also in this clip you can see how the white balance can be changing, giving a slightly more reddish tone than the real one. Indoors it possibly manages to be a bit more stable in terms of white balance, so it gives us a good quality in colors. Although the fact that it has the stabilization disabled by default can play against it, giving us a video with much more movement than we would like. Even in this indoor shot we started to notice a bit more noise presence. In backlight, it will give priority to illuminate the face if you have it enabled in the settings, otherwise it will give priority to balance well the areas that are more illuminated, so it is not so convenient to record in this type of environment. And when recording at night, you will also notice a greater presence of noise, although the areas with more artificial lighting will give a better result. But it is not able to maintain a good balance between the brightest and darkest areas so that both appear well lit at the same time, and in the darker areas it won't be able to gather a lot of illumination either, having a result with a lot of darkness. As I already told you, it comes with the stabilization turned off, so it is likely that your videos will come out with too much movement if you are walking, let alone if you are running. And even with stabilization enabled, you'll notice that it's a pretty simple stabilization, totally digital, that even when walking you'll see a lot of movement, and when running it is not able to disguise them in a good way either. When recording video, we will have a maximum 10x zoom, which is very similar to what we saw in the photograph. In fact, when zooming in and out, it seems to have a jelly effect, so it doesn't really represent very good quality. It doesn't have a slow motion mode, but it does have a fast motion mode that can go from 4x, which would be very useful for recording movements of people, but it doesn't have stabilization, so it can be very awkward in fast motion in this mode. Although it can go up to 1800x, so you could perfectly well record the movement of clouds or spectacular scenery or even the growth of the plants. In the front camera, although we do have full HD recording available, again we will have a very simple result because it has no stabilization. It also has an inaccurate color rendering and a sincerely bad backlight performance because the most illuminated areas will appear completely burned. Also remember that it has fixed focus, so the quality is really very simple. Indoors we will also notice a little more presence of noise, although fortunately it maintains color saturation well. So in this sense, I think the experience is not too bad. And at night, again, if you have a good light source, I think the result will be positive. But if you're in a little bit darker area, you'll definitely start to get a lot more noise in the scene. In fact, on the face you can notice a lot of graininess when there's more movement in the darker areas. But I insist that if you have a good light source nearby, the result can become positive. Although remember that the fact that it does not have stabilization can play against it. In addition, it does not have a slow or fast front camera, nor does it have a dual camera. Regarding the operating system, it comes with Android 13 and on top of it MyOS, also in its 13th version. So we are in front of a relatively well updated operating system, but it does not offer an update policy that guarantees that it will have a longer lifetime. So in this section, it may also have one of its weak points. Although honestly, in this price range, Samsung is the only one that does offer a clear policy of updates. The manufacturer adds a few options that you might find useful. For example, we have the always on display feature, which is always present on devices that have AMOLED screens. So you can place a special cover when you have the screen locked, and it is able to show you some animation and quick notifications. Honestly, the feature looks very good because it is also an animated cover and not just static. You can place different types of clocks, both digital and analog, or even some text signatures that you can customize with different colors and different phrases. As I had already anticipated, you can also customize the rear notification light section. You can say whether you want these light effects to be working for incoming calls or for notifications. Personally, I wish it would let us choose both options, but what I also like is that you can select the same color for all incoming calls, or you can select different colors for different contacts. So it can be very handy to know that when a certain person is talking to you, it lights up red. And when another person is talking to you, it lights up green. This way, you avoid turning your cell phone to find out who is calling you. It can also be synchronized with music, but you should know that it does not synchronize with any application, but only with MP3 or similar files that you play on the cell phone, so it loses some of its appeal. And finally, it can also indicate the charging status to go to a green status when the device is fully charged, and you can customize the schedule in which you want this light to work. Finally, we will also find the traditional gestures and movements that we find in many other devices to wake up the screen, snooze alarms, or even turn on the flashlight, for example, shaking when you're inside the lock screen. So, these are gestures that can be useful. Although I insist that these will indeed appear available on a large number of devices. And finally, you can also select whether or not you want to wake up the Google Assistant by pressing and holding the power button. And by doing this action, it also reminds me that the vibration motor is on the Z-axis, so it is a simple motor, but it has good power and it does respond in a good way to the interactions of the system. We could say in conclusion that it is a simple and very stable operating system, but with too much bloatware, which in fact seems to be a Telcel system, because in Mexico brings a Telcel widget with Telcel wallpaper, and with many applications of course added as bloatware. Fortunately, many of them can be uninstalled, but it is a bit annoying to see so many applications that you will not need pre-installed. The built-in fingerprint reader supports up to 5 different records, and obviously being a reader that is inside the screen gives a much more futuristic look, although not as fast unlocking as we have in external readers, but this happens in practically all cell phones. Although definitely, among the in-screen readers I've tried, I don't think this is one of the fastest. Honestly, it feels like a slightly slow unlock, but if you're patient enough, you simply have to leave your finger for a little longer, and that's it. Honestly, it's no big deal. And it does give it a very futuristic feel to have this reader integrated inside the screen. And not only that, but it will also allow us to change the unlock animation to give an effect completely to our liking. In fact, it is one of the manufacturers that offers us more variety when changing the animation of this effect. It also has a feature called Application Quick Launch, which notes how it will give us some suggestions if we keep our finger on that reader after unlocking the device. I'm assigning some random apps, and notice how we could have this quick shortcut the moment we have unlocked our cell phone if we don't let go of our finger. The placement of the reader is a little lower than traditional. Generally, cell phones have a slightly higher reader, but it's just a matter of getting used to it. You will also notice that it has facial recognition, although it is only in 2 dimensions, so it is not as advanced as the facial recognition on the iPhone or other devices as well. If your priority is security, I wouldn't recommend enabling facial recognition as much. If you want to enable it for convenience, I would also recommend that you enable Google Smart Lock, which can allow the device to stay unlocked in trusted places or while connected to trusted devices. That way you avoid having to constantly unlock your phone. And another thing focused on security that incorporates by Google is the password manager, which as you will notice is Google autofill and does not verify through your fingerprint before filling in the data, so it is important that you change that setting if you want to safeguard your user information and passwords. It also has an application called My Vault, developed by ZTE, which through your fingerprint will allow you to protect all kinds of information and even applications privately. And it is curious that it even lets us save passwords here, but they are not synchronized with the autofill section of the different text fields. It has no child mode, nor does it have any collaboration with a special antivirus, relying solely on Google Play Protect. And in the emergency section, it incorporates what we already know in several devices, so you can press 5 times the on-off button, and thus you can make an emergency call. The battery is 4,800 milliamps, and I must say that I was surprised, as it performed slightly better than the average 5000 milliamp battery, so despite not being such a big battery, it does give us a good performance. Not spectacular, but I think that for the price it performs well. In addition, it does offer us a standard saving mode to optimize this in everyday life. Or it also brings an ultra save mode that could help us in some emergency cases, although you must agree to enable some permissions the first time you use it. And whenever this happens, I say that the system is not well optimized because a user who maybe doesn't know so much might find it very difficult to log in to enable all those permissions. But once you've done that, you can add up to 4 additional apps that you also consider essential to let you use them within this very power saving mode. Its charger is 33 watts and is considerably good. In my test, with 15 minutes, it charged 30%. In 30 minutes, it charged 63%. And the full charge it finished in 1 hour and 4 minutes. So I think that's one of its strengths. Although you should know that it doesn't have any battery protection mechanism like smart charging, charge lock, or anything like that. So the battery is good, but the experience could still be improved more through software. But despite having 5G, it is not going to offer us some way to select which applications can connect to the internet with our mobile data and which applications cannot. So the experience is not that advanced, but it is definitely good to have such a high connection speed. Regarding Wi-Fi networks, it only sticks with Wi-Fi 5, but that's what we would expect from a device in this price range. So the download speed will not be exaggeratedly high, but I insist that at this price it is fine. It also arrives with Bluetooth 5.2 for a good connection, although it is not the most modern. But at the price, I also repeat that the device complies. It doesn't have NFC, it doesn't have FM radio, but it does have wireless screen projection, so you can project your content to other monitors. And yes, it does support more screens, not just Chromecast. You could also get to connect it to your vehicle with Android Auto, and it comes with the USB 2.0 port. And notice that it does have a good amount of sensors, and this is another point that impresses me because most manufacturers remove a lot of sensors from their mid-range devices, but this one has virtually all of them, including also the proximity sensor, which is completely physical. And also a sensor that is not so common to see in the range would be the geomagnetic field sensor. I honestly think this is a good device in this aspect. But in the ecosystem aspect, definitely that it won't be a good device because ZTE currently doesn't sell some other devices to complement your purchase like earphones, watches, or something similar. In that aspect, it feels an extremely weak ecosystem. Although fortunately by having Android, let's say that it is part of another ecosystem that is quite open, that by integrating technologies like Google Fast Pair or Nearby Share, you could get to interact in a good way with other phones. But it feels that it depends a lot on Google in several aspects, such as cloud storage or also in the control of home devices, which will be through Google Drive and Google Home respectively. Let's go to our application opening test while I tell you that this device comes with a new processor from Unisoc. It is the T760, a processor that is not famous, but according to the tests I have done, it performs considerably well and has a 6 nanometer construction process. So it's considerably modern. It took 3.3 seconds on average to open each of these applications. And for a device of this price, the truth is that that experience is considerably good. The truth is, this processor is not to be underestimated, simply because it's from a brand that's not that well known. I think it can compete perfectly well against more advanced processors from other brands. So I think it is a very good performance that we will find here, since it also comes with 6 GB of RAM, which notice that they seem to be well managed because we have not seen reboots in applications, and it also has another 10 GB of virtual RAM, which again I insist that they seem to be well used. The truth is that the performance is considerably good and possibly one of its strengths. Surprisingly, since I tell you, the processor is not of a well-known brand, but I think that in this price range you are going to find inferior performance in many competitors, at least when opening applications and navigate within them. Sincerely, that this device looks like a good option for those looking for something with a good screen and with a positive performance. And another of the most amazing points of this cell phone for its price is the storage, as it has 256 gigabytes, and this is undoubtedly another of the great advantages of this cell phone. Honestly, it seems a highly recommended purchase. It will not be a cell phone that is going to fill easily because it does have a lot of internal space where you can store many photos, many videos, and even many games. Although it does not have expansion via micro SD card, but I do not consider it necessary having so much internal storage. And let's finish this video talking about how was the gaming experience. You should know that ZTE doesn't incorporate any special application where it has enhancements through software or something like that. So their system is very simple in this section for gaming. In Call of Duty by default, it gives us low quality at medium frame rate, but we can go up to medium graphics quality and high frame rate. Although for being a processor that is not so well known and that is recent, it does not give us access to many of the effects that we would like. And also because it is such a new processor, we were not able to monitor specifically how it did with the frames per second. Although by pure calculation, we could say that it was running at about 40 frames per second. However, when recording the screen, this rate drops significantly. The truth is that the game went very well. It didn't freeze or anything, although it wasn't such a complicated test because we didn't have such advanced graphics or anything like that. So if you don't care much about the graphic quality, I think it can give you a smooth gaming experience. In Legends, we changed the automatic setting to a medium setting at 60 frames per second to go along with its price. With this again, we see a considerably smooth experience. We could say it was going between 50 and 60 frames per second in the game, although when recording the screen it doesn't look quite as fluid. But honestly, that you will indeed have a good experience running this type of content, obviously with graphics and this quality suited to its price. But unlike other devices we saw from Unisoc in the past, I think this processor undoubtedly represents a considerable evolution in the quality of the processors that this manufacturer has. In the SpongeBob game, by default it gives us the medium quality and resolution, and for the test we left it at that same quality but we went up to 60 frames per second. And the truth is that it surprised because it seems to have maintained 60 frames per second stable, but I insist on the word seems because we could not do a more specific monitoring unlike other smartphones. But undoubtedly I think it will be able to offer us a smooth quality in terms of games as long as you select an average quality in terms of graphics according to its price. And finally, in Henshin Impact by default, we have the very low quality, but for the test we selected the low quality at a rate of 60 frames per second to see what it was capable of, and with the motion blur on low. And honestly, according to pure visual calculations, we could say that it was between 40 and 60 frames per second. We don't think it went to 60, but we did see a considerably fluid experience, although I insist that when recording the screen it doesn't look as fluid as it would in real life. It is definitely a considerably good gaming experience despite not being a specialist. Possibly its only drawback in games is that it does not have as much graphics support for advanced effects as you might find on Snapdragon processors. But if you are only interested in fluidity, if you are going to have a considerably smooth experience when running a lot of content. And for the moment, this has been all for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can tell us, and we'll see you next time.